Hello and welcome back to Funny in Theory, a St. Paul Saints promotional podcast. Hello and welcome back to Funny in Theory, a St. Paul Saints promotional podcast. I'm Joshua Will, Entertainment Director with the St. Paul Saints Baseball Club.
And I am Sierra Bailey, Director of Marketing and Promotions.
Now, many times we've talked about what it takes to get a good promotion on the field, something that's memorable, something that's funny, something that's enjoyable. Sierra, when you were an intern, you talked about how you fell in love with promotions. Do you remember the exact moment you thought, this is for me? What is it about a promotion that you really, for lack of a better word, glom onto? Because you've always said you loved it. Now I'm going to ask you why.
I don't know if there was one moment, but it was probably within the first few games that I worked, I had like a perma smile on. Like I don't ever think of like having a smile on my face when I'm attending a sporting event, whether playing in it or, going to it as a fan. And at a Saints game, I didn't stop smiling the entire time, and I did not care about what was going on the field. Like I did, but I walked away every single night being like, wow, tonight was super fun. And that's how the whole love for promotions just happened.
Did you expect it when you started as an intern? And first of all, why did you get the internship? I know that at the time you were thinking about going into...
Yeah, I really wanted to work for the Twins, and I couldn't get an interview. So I thought if I worked for a baseball team down the road, it would make my resume look better. And ended up working. I had never been to a Saints game as a kid. We always went to Twins games, right. And as well as had our own games, throughout the entire year of different sports. We never had a dull moment in the Bailey residence. But it was just so eye-opening to be at a Saints game. Like I'd heard a little bit about them, but not really at all. And so I was doing it just to, try and get that dream internship or job that I wanted with the Twins. And it turns out that the Saints ended up being my dream because it was so fun about marrying the sport as well as entertaining people at the same time.
I tell many people who are like, well, how do you like working for the Saints? And I always start with the same phrase. I don't use this term much, but I am blessed. And I really kind of feel that because it just takes everything that I do and everything that I love. And now the ability to work with friends, night after night, is fantastic.
Well, you can't be a Saint without being blessed. So
that's true.
That's the start.
So you talked about, and now I'm going into a segue here. And if what I think you didn't do, then the whole podcast is over.
Well, I do correct you on a lot of things. So
so you just got back. Where did you go? What did you see on vacation?
Oh, we Jordan, Lynn, and myself went to Kane County. I tell people who don't know what Kane County is, they were an affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays. And then when minor league baseball and major league baseball did all the restructuring, Saints became affiliated. Kane County was unaffiliated then, and the American Association scooped them up because it's a great ballpark and a great city and like area to have games. And so it's kind of like Kane County took the place of the Saints this year in the American Association. So they are now independent, and they have our coaching staff as well.
Exactly. So Kane County is in what state?
Illinois.
And who's coaching right now?
George-isms.
George. That's where I want to move on to right now. We've talked about what it takes to make a successful promotion, but I would say without George at the helm, and I don't want to say allowing it, but going along with it, and also just kind of letting us, meaning the Saints, do our thing while he does his thing, and then seamlessly merge them together.
Right. George saw the bigger picture. He saw that the Saints need to be who they are. Oh, the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's right. DB, TB. It's all B.
Or are you correcting yourself on the affiliate?
Well, Jordan just showed me.
Okay. And I also want to say that George still is. George is still with us, not with the Saints, but with us on Earth. So George still is seeing the big picture, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Because he saw that he needs to let the Saints be who they are in order to, continuously fill the stands and be authentic in the brand that we were trying to be. And so it was definitely some roadblocks along the way of learning each other's what lines are, because everyone has their own routines. They have everything that they need to get their job done, right? That includes George. That includes him representing the players, as well as us trying to do all the fun stuff, promotions that sometimes we need players or we need access to different areas in the field and they might be, using it. And so it took a little while to get everyone's routines down and figure it out. But once we know how the other person operates, and you can say that with anything. Once you learn how the other person operates, it's a lot easier to navigate, to try and get, again, everyone has that end, same goal, fun, the stands filled with fans, and just representing, the St. Paul community as best we can.
Yeah. George is almost kind of an enigma because he's an imposing figure, but at the same time, he's also, and I don't want to say teddy bear, but he's very caring. He's very giving. He's very, he's not even soft-spoken. When I first met him, he was walking past the table in the offices here, and you introduced him and say, "Hey, this is Josh." He's like, "Hey, Josh, how you doing?" And he came over. And he doesn't talk that high, but shook my hand. "Good to have you on board. We'll talk to you next." And the next time I saw him, just stoic. He was doing his job. And what's very odd is you and I will stand next to him every single night, and sometimes never say a word. So I didn't get to know him for about a good 2 years because I had my job, he had his job. And you've heard this story before, but I lived in fear about 6 weeks after my first season started, because every game I would put down the gate, would stand next to him, and I'd say, "Have a good game, coach." And he'd say, "Thanks." Never thought anything of it. And then one day, Lee Adams, 15 feet away, just turns, his eyes are wide. It's like, "What did you call him?"
That's what I was thinking. I'm surprised.
And I said, "Have a good game." No. And so I was told that you don't ever call a major league manager a coach, because they're pitching coaches, they're batting coaches, they're first base coaches. You got to treat them with respect. Call him George, call him Skipper, call him anything but coach.
Yeah.
And so I thought, this is why this guy isn't talking to me. He is just, so the next game, I said, "Have a good game, Skipper." And he said, "Thanks." Same that he does every night. I thought, well, he's not, okay, next night. I was like, and I'm saying Skipper to me is just weird because then I feel like Gilligan. Next night, "Have a good night, George. Thanks." And it was just very fun. But I for the first 6 after that, I was like just living in constant fear.
Right.
But my favorite story about George, and I want to see if I can dig some out from you, is, and this is really kind of his philosophy, is in 2018, I think the last game of the season, you guys did the world's largest game of Twister.
It wasn't the last game of the season.
Close to the last game, wasn't it?
It was in the middle of a homestand. Middle of a 10-game homestand, I think.
But wasn't it kind of at the end of the season?
It was in August.
Okay. So the reason I was saying that, and I wasn't there,
okay,
but I was told, they didn't want to leave that for the rest of the season, obviously.
Right.
And so you guys were up the night before painting how many dots, do you think?
56,000.
And you guys went to George beforehand and said, "We have this idea. What do you think of it?" And his answer was something along the lines of,
I don't even know if we went to George.
Oh, okay. So my version of it was, is it going to help the game? Is it going to bring people in? Go ahead and do it.
Right.
Which I think is
I think that's what he would have said, but I really don't know if we didn't ask permission on that. The people we would have needed to ask permission is the American Association. And I think Derek gave a courtesy call the day of the game where the dots were already painted. So it's kind of like
gotcha.
Just wanted to give you a heads up.
This may be an urban legend, but take it for truth because...
Right. And it could have happened.
That's kind of how George is. But do you have any particular George Tsamis stories?
Oh, man, I have a lot. That guy, he's one of the quirkiest human beings I've ever come across, which I love. He's very into Shark Week. Like, very.
I wasn't expecting
very into Shark Week.
Okay.
Like, if it's Shark Week, he needs sharks up on the video board. It's just, I don't know, I'd call them George-isms. Like, no matter what, the video board needs to be on because we need to know what time it is. So he's all about the routine. But
yes.
he's got a fun little sense of humor himself, too. He loves Chick-fil-A. He loves ice cream sandwiches. Ask me how I know all of this stuff. It's because we were with him for 9 seasons, 8 years, something like that. And so when I started full-time for the Saints again, the first day that I met him, he immediately didn't even say hi. He goes, "You were an intern." So he remembered me from 4 years before, probably, dressing up, being silly on the field. Mm-hmm. He goes, "You were an intern." And so I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing that he remembered who I was out of a group of how many game day interns. But he's, like you said, he's very empathetic. But I think the best way to describe George is quirky. He
Yeah.
has his quirks and he knows what works for him. And sometimes quirky can come off as spastic. He has his moments, but it's only because he doesn't want to let any side down. He doesn't want to let the Saints down because we have an agenda, but he wants to make sure that he has every point of information to tell his players to make sure that they don't mess up what we're trying to do as well. And so he's very detail oriented, but that's one of the things that you learn as you go knowing him. It's just, he's not so much like uptight about anything. It's just, he just really wants to make sure that everyone is clear on all of the information.
Yeah. Not only that, but his love for the game, obviously.
Right.
He's not with us this season, obviously, but there are things that he would do during a game which I still miss. First of all is his away. Away, which I always thought was away, and I haven't been able to get that T in there to make it sound away, but that would happen all the time. The other one is looking over and saying that the speed gun is off.
Radar gun's not working.
Radar gun's not working. Sierra.
Turn the lights on.
Turn the lights on. And then the occasional outburst. Just a very calm-mannered man, but if he didn't believe what was going on there, he would just he may have used a profanity or two.
Yeah.
But nothing that any other coach wouldn't do. But there was just that, it's weird to say this, but there's a passion behind it. He wasn't being a jerk. He was getting his point across. He did it and then moved on. I thought, man, I'd like to be like that in real life.
He had a healthy balance of getting tossed during a game as well as just walking away when he knew it wasn't worth it. Sometimes I think he'd get tossed on purpose because the team needed a little spark, a little energy. And I know he's done that before. So,
but he's also, the thing is he also would play with us as much as he could. So when we would give him coffee beforehand, he always took the coffee, never kind of argued about that. When we had last chance prom, he was our homecoming king.
He was our prom king.
Sister Roz, which we'll talk about later, was our queen. And he, middle of a game, went out there and was crowned and played that. And was himself the whole time. Didn't look like he didn't want to do it. Didn't look like he wanted to overdo it. He was just George the entire time, which I really like. Quick story for you. When I was talking about, I'm not the most confrontational person, but if I think I've been wronged or particularly someone that I love or like has been wronged, I'll stand up for them. The other day, this was, and this just made me think of it when we were talking about George. I was at a 4-way stop sign. And a car was on my right, and it was my turn to go.
Okay.
So I was about to pull forward, and I noticed this car is not slowing down. So it takes a left turn, which almost clips the front of my car. And I give the honk, and the person goes by me and just gives me the finger. And I look at this person drive, and then I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I see that they actually pull over to the side of the road. But because that's where they were supposed to go. I'm about to go home. I'm like, no. So I actually go around the block and I pull up, which I will never do. And I said, that was a 4-way stop sign. And the response was, I was late. I said, so that makes
But they're still in their car?
But that's okay? And they're like, yeah. I said, you almost hit me. She goes, you don't understand. I was late. I have to get to work. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't, and then a child gets out of the car, and I just look, and it was one of those moments of like, all right, well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
And then I drove home, but unlike George, who would have a burst and then move on, the rest of the day, I'm like, all right, but then the thought that, did I just pull up to another car? Don't do that again, too, because that, you never know what someone's going to do.
Yeah, but sometimes you got to stand up for yourself. Even though it's just, that's probably not going to change anything about that person's day. But you were able to vent, so it should make you feel a little bit better.
Yeah, but the whole, I'm late. Oh, you got an excuse. Well, that's okay. As long as you were late, that's fine.
Yes.
The other thing I want to talk about.
You should have been like, oh, I'm sorry, my bad.
Oh, you were late.
Bye, have a great day.
I'm sorry, I was following.
Do you want me to drop your kid off for you?
When I saw the kid, I was like, oh, do I keep going or do I just wish the best
Which
for
also,
these two
like,
people?
if you have a kid in your car, like, you shouldn't be driving that.
Yeah, exactly. So I
recklessly.
went from being angry to dad to like, I wanted to
Concerned.
just go home and then just. I almost put it on Facebook. I wanted to put a little story, and then thought, why am I sharing this? Nobody cares. So
Keyboard warrior.
I'm so.
What's the
good.
male version of a Karen?
I've heard Steve.
It might be Josh now.
It might be Josh. No, you just can't get really mad. Look at that, Josh. The other thing that with my name, it's very hard unless you say Joshua to put a apostrophe S on it. I hate it.
Josh's
Socks.
Joshua's.
Yeah. So
Will's.
Joshua Wills. Yeah.
Wow.
I like my names, but they're
What
not
a
really
tangent.
Interns. This is the other end of what it takes
Pause
to
for dramatic.
dun, dun, dun,
Interns. George to interns.
what it takes to have successful promotions. Obviously, having a manager that kind of lets you get away with stuff and knows that something's going to go wrong, and he's seen stuff go wrong. You know, I don't think we were ever massively hurried by him to say, you know, get off the field or get out of our way. And the Saints players have been great about that too, because they got to run in between us. They got to kind of put up with that. Grounds crew has to put up with us when we have food promos and we destroy their lawn. Obviously, there's a pig that'll occasionally defecate or urinate on the field. But so you've got all that going on. Then you got the other side of it, which are our interns, which really are kind of the red blood cells of our
I would agree with that.
of our veins that keep this place alive.
Right.
When you started as an intern, were the tasks, were the expectations, were they all pretty much the same?
I would think so. You just got to be open. I mean, it's not necessarily a job for you to be if you're a shy person. Not saying you need to be an extrovert, but you got to be okay with, you know, if we got to do something on the field in front of fans or like dress and drag, like our guy interns are the ones that drag the field. They put on dresses. They also put on dragon costumes. But you got to be okay with, you know, just open to the process, open to just the entertainment side. As well as some people are too shy to go up to folks and ask if they want to be in a promotion because they don't know how to approach people yet. So I really think that those are all skills that you learn. You got to have like a basis for a little bit. But more or less, you don't need a ton of experience. You just got to be an open individual.
Exactly. When we first talked to them at the first meeting in the beginning of the year, you know, I said, we really only got two main rules for you. Don't be on your phone when you're supposed to be working. And the second is when we ask you to do something or you ask to step up, we just want you to try.
Yep.
We don't care if you fail. We don't care if you're the best at it.
Yep.
But this is why you're here, to see where your comfortability
and just
is,
have
where
fun
your
with
talents
it.
are. Exactly. And that's the big thing.
Yep.
And so this year, how many interns do we have?
Oh man, I want to say around 35 at the moment now. I think we started around 40, but around 35, and then each night.
Some of them haven't been watered or fed, so we're down to about 30 right now. Yeah.
I think we have around 18 working a night. In previous years, we used to have 20 to 25 working a night. We were still kind of going through COVID guidelines, but I think we're sitting at around a little less than 20 working a night right now.
And can you just let people know the different jobs, because they rotate every night. They don't do the same thing every night.
Yes.
What it is they do in addition to helping with the actual on-field promotions?
For sure. So you might get assigned to be one of the 2 or 3 that are finding the contestants for all the promotions. So you're finding them, letting them know when the promotion's happening, when they're checking in at fan services, getting them to sign their waiver. And you're keeping track of that all throughout the night. Like, oh crap, my contestants for tie race didn't show. On the fly, I need to find 4 new people, sign waivers, get them to where they need to be. You might be on prizes. So anytime a prize is needed, you know, to maybe an on-field contestant or to a lucky row of the game, whatever it is, you are in charge of making sure that they get that.
Stats?
Yeah, we have somebody who kind of helps out. They're not our PA announcers. They take their own stats, do their own book, but this person is there to help with different things and assist and be eyes to them if they need it, as well as keeping track of some of our things that for our corporate partners we need to keep track of. So we can go back and say, oh man, what's one of them? Maybe Marsden cleanup hitter of the game. Marsden donates $25 to Make-A-Wish Foundation for however many bases the cleanup hitter gets that night. So if they have 2 doubles, that's 4 bases. We need to know that so we can tell Marsden how much they're supposed to donate to Make-A-Wish Foundation. We're not able to keep track of that because we're running around all over the place. So we need someone dedicated to make sure that we get all of that stuff, you know, accounted for. So we're good on our end. If there's a league outing, if there's kids who get to play on the field before the game, you're helping throw tennis balls to them or playing catch with them, whatever the case is, and making sure that while they're out there, you can be engaging with them, but they also kind of have to follow rules as well. So if they're climbing all over everything, you're the one not letting them do that. So if we have a giveaway at the gate, you're helping out with the giveaway pregame, and then during the game, you're just helping do the on-field promotions and things like that. So there's a lot of different jobs that they do rotate between selling tennis balls for the tennis ball toss. And then I always tell people after our meeting, we have a meeting every single day. People want to trade jobs. I don't care, because they do start to realize what they're good at, what they like to do, and maybe what they don't like to do as much. And someone might want to trade with you. And I'd so much rather have the trade happen to where people are okay with what they're doing that night.
Or happy with what they're doing, as opposed to feeling like
they're forced to do something. And there's no job that's actually like absolutely awful here, but there are some that are a little bit more desirable to others. And that changes in the eye of every single intern. Some people love doing contestants, love talking to people. Others, introverts, not necessarily. They don't like to approach people. They feel like they're bothering them if they go up and ask them a question. So it's all in the eye of the beholder of what you think is a desirable job that night or not. But again, if you guys want to trade, great. That sounds awesome. I don't really care who does what, as long as everything gets done.
It's kind of a fun thing to watch around the stadium as well, because in the past they had a bright blue T-shirt. This year it's black with a big logo.
Yes.
And it's one of those, if you look at the crowd for the trees, you don't see anything, but suddenly you see the interns absolutely everywhere, and that's always kind of fun. Now, there's also a different level of interns. There's the summer interns. You have the full-time interns.
Yep.
And how do you choose who comes back the next season? Do they apply? Do they talk to you? Do you look for a certain something?
Yeah, we usually don't let people intern twice in the same role. So, like, if you were a game day intern in 2019, you're not going to be a game day intern in 2020. I mean, you did it once, but a lot of the game day interns then try to apply for the full-time internship the next year. And so we'll, go through the same interview process that we go with them, but we know a little bit more about those people because they actually worked for us previous season, which could be your best tool. I mean, it's like you're interviewing the entire season for that spot in the next season. So, but yeah, we have the full-time internship. We usually get around 10 to 12 of them in the different departments. And it's kind of the same way the promo schedule comes about. That's how the interns come about. We do a bunch of interviews and we try to just figure out not necessarily the two, greatest person that would be a great promotions intern, but it's trying to figure out what group of people that we think would mesh well with ours and also help us, and they can learn a lot along the way. So we might have two people that would be super awesome at fan services, but they're like the best people that we talk to. We wouldn't just hire one saying, we only have one fan services spot. I'm sorry, you don't get an internship. It's, well, both of you are awesome. So how can we figure this out to make sure that you're still a part of our staff? Yeah. And maybe one's fan services, maybe one's promotions. Because you know what? There's a lot of fan engagement involved with that one too. So,
and you're not the only Saints staff that started as an intern here. We've got...
Correct. There's... Oh man, I did the math before. What were we at? Like almost 48%. I think it was like 48%.
Almost half our full-time staff started as interns.
Yes, correct.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when do you do the process? I'm hoping that someone's listening says, hey, my nephew, John thinks he's funny, but he's talented and he can lift things. How would they get?
Side note, everyone in the interview says they're funny. And then you put them on the spot and they don't know any jokes. Well, I'm more like conversationally funny. Sure you are, Frank.
I'm just awkwardly funny.
You hear the same things from a lot of kids. That's how you got to stand out during the interview. Use words that not everyone else uses. Instead of saying hardworking, saying you're dedicated or something.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. We usually start the process of you can apply in either November-ish or December, and we leave it open for a couple of months, and then we start interviewing in January, and hopefully everything's wrapped up by March, mid-March. It depends. Full-time interns, we usually like to have it done by the end of February. It's like January is first round interviews, February, second round, let's pick. Game days, since there are more of them, those still are being hired, March, maybe even April. But the good chunk of them are hired also in that same time frame.
Can we talk about, I always like to call it like the timeline of an intern, how you see him at the beginning of the season, I'll tell you my version of it and see if it kind of matches up with what you see, and then what you get kind of at the end of the season. Beginning of the season, honestly, they're like ducklings. They just all kind of go down the hall together. You know, and there's always like one way behind. They're nervous, but they don't. Everyone's willing to try. Everyone's willing to help. Everyone's saying hello. Everyone's saying how are you and stuff like that. And then a few weeks after that, they kind of get their groove, and it's absolutely fantastic. Then a few weeks after that, the groove is so smooth right now that they just kind of forget what they're doing.
Somebody else will do it.
Yeah, and then
that mentality.
And then one of us or someone will really kind of like, guys, you gotta step it back up. There's I don't want to say we yell at them, and then they snap back to it, which is fantastic. But by this point, you can also see who has become friends, who maybe seeing each other outside of the park as well.
Yep.
And that's always kind of fun. Who broke up with who. And, I don't talk to them too much about that, but you'll always hear it there. And then for some reason, when they start, you love something, let it go, they start going back to college. They all start, some leave oddly like in the end of July, middle of July, and then August, and then suddenly, there's just a couple left. And then there's the real diehard ones that are back in school, but they're close enough that they can come back and either do the occasional night game or weekend games. Yep. Which is, it's also a very fun time for me, because I get to see people from the front office come down and have to drag the field. And, how are we going to fill these positions that we were so dependent on? Right. But what else do you see in like the life cycle?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Cycle of an intern.
I don't know if the life cycle for a lot of them ever ends. Like, I still continuously get called for reference checks on interns I had in 2014, 2015. And I have to be completely honest with the people, like, okay, they worked for me 7 years ago, so I'm going to do my best to remember specific things that you're asking about them. I just remember they were a great human being. And so it's one of those that they still stick around. And like you said, a lot of them go from a game day to a full-time the next year because they loved it so much. Or, they need or want help trying to secure an internship with maybe the Timberwolves. Like, usually at the end of our season, I want to say the Timberwolves are starting to hire for their season, and kind of similar roles. And so a lot of them are like, how can I continue? How can I get more, experience going into I'm going into my senior year of college, blah. But I don't know if the life cycle ever really truly ends, because you always also I get emails. Hey, Sierra, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm coming to the game this Saturday with my 2 best friends from college. I was wondering if there was like a between inning promotion we could do or anything. Just let me know. That'd be great. Thanks. Or you get the whole group of game day interns that come back the season after to be a fan. And then they just judge the new set of game day interns like, oh, our class was way better.
I so like that. It is. I will always get a little side eye. Now, I feel bad, particularly since this happened last homestand, where a fantastic intern was here, and I didn't recognize him because I was just in work mode, and he had broken his arm, and I was just kind of like not looking at his face. And if they're not in their shirts, sometimes I don't recognize them. And I try so hard to learn their names, but their shifts are always rotating. And apart from Shogo this year, I don't know if I know any of them. But it's so great to see them come back. But I do feel bad when I'm like, oh yeah, you were an intern.
Yes.
And they all wear lanyards, so I never start a conversation by looking in their eyes. I have to look down, look at their name and stuff like that.
This year was the hardest. Like, usually we interview and then they actually show up to work, and I remember about half of their names, so I have to go through the process of learning. This year was way tougher because all interviews were over the phone. I gave up on doing a bunch of Zoom calls on them just because it was getting to be a lot. So I was just doing the phone interview. That way I can creep on them too while I'm interviewing them.
Would they have their cameras on, or would they?
Yes.
Okay.
So I didn't know what any of these kids look like. And it took me a lot longer to realize a lot of their names. And a lot of times I had to do it through process of elimination. Like, okay, well, this is who's working tonight. I know what these people look like. Now I just got to figure out these 3 names, like what they look like. But I think I got it down.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're incredibly hardworking. I believe they get here about 2.5 hours before the game.
Game days do, yes.
Yep, and then they're here at the end because they're cleaning up. They're doing tennis ball toss.
Yep.
And you'll have a pre-game meeting. You'll have a post-game meeting.
Yeah.
And it's great because they just kind of all circle together, and it's really a lot of fun to
Tight-knit.
watch. Yeah. But apart from that, that's kind of what I wanted to hit on. I think we've got some more stories to talk about with George and with the interns as they come on, but those are kind of the things that make what we do, successful.
Right, and fun.
Yeah.
And it takes out the monotony of, essentially, we do the same thing every single night. But when you throw in, I always say, the X factor of different people doing it, as well as you can throw that in with interns as well, you're always going to come away with the night with probably 3 different inside jokes that might be similar to an inside joke from the night before, but it's way different because it's different personalities and people involved in them.
And it's always fun to watch to see kind of what they glom onto, what they like. You're like, I didn't think that was funny, but apparently they do. And so that's kind of how that, Dippin' Dots kind of started that way. And then the last thing that I really like is, unfortunately, the interns this season, and particularly last season, haven't got to do as much as get into costumes, get onto field, do coach calisthenics, do nerd aerobics, do water balloon tests, whatever. Sometimes it's just kind of fun to feature the interns. This year they haven't been able to because our promo area is not our promo area. We've been all over.
Yep.
And, for me, I know Rally Squirrel, a character that'll come out in the 8th or 9th inning, was here long before me. But we really kind of kicked it up in the 2019 season.
Yep.
And it started, and we would put an intern into the costume, and they would say, well, what does Rally Squirrel do? And we're like, what do you want? What do you want?
If you were a fan, what would you want to see from Rally Squirrel?
So everyone had their own interpretation, which to me is just absolutely amazing. So you get to see the introverts, you get to see the extroverts, you get to see the awful dance moves.
Yep.
And the rule with Rally Squirrel, and Rally Squirrel is just this really big, ugly, smelly costume, and he wears a jersey, carries around a bat, and he just gets the players excited. Usually comes out when at least for 2019, when the team was down by 6 or 7 runs.
Yeah.
So it's not a serious mascot. But for some reason, and we also had Rally Cake, we had Rally Kobe, we had Rally Sean, we had all of that. But Rally Squirrel came out, and we had one intern, couldn't tell you his name right now. And in terms of from a 0 to a 10, 10 being super excited and 0 putting no effort into it, he was around a 2.
A 2.
But for some reason, and the rule is if you lose, you don't get to be Rally Squirrel again. Somebody else gets to do it. This guy kept winning.
I want to say he was like 6-0.
Yeah, it was just insane. And if you could see me right now, I'm just kind of standing here and putting my arms up and just asking the congregation to sing. Yeah, it's like, yay. And he kept coming back time and time again. No.
He got a big head over it, too. He made us do like a rally tunnel for him after a game.
I was just about to say that. During the game, nothing. But the minute it was done, he was whipping the bat over his head. People are carrying him down the hallway. He's giving high fives. I'm like, where was that during But it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. And, again, I think what it was Sean who, Rally Squirrel, this guy, actually got player of the game.
Yes.
And the only thing Sean Aronson said was not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah.
It was just a shot of this kid. But you know what? He's going to be living with that memory
the rest of his
life. And if you're listening right now,
please remind us what your name was.
Yeah, you were like a 2.5.
I do kind of remember, but I don't want to say it.
Yeah, we just looked and we shook our head, but it worked, and that's why you can't say this is how things have to be done.
Yeah, put your own spin on it.
Cool. I'm Joshua Will.
And I am Sierra Bailey.
And you have been listening to Funny in Theory, a St. Paul Saints promotional podcast.
Good job.
It's not strange, both things are rearranged. No one to blame. It's all for the fun of the game.